was the one in violation, not anybody else.
Reaction to last night's speech, and hear from former Texas Governor Rick Perry, the Hill tweeting Perry, Cruz, quote, didn't get the memo on GOP unity, and some of the discussion continuing on into the Texas delegation breakfast this morning. Ben Jacobs, who covers the campaign, the convention for The Guardian, with this tweet: Texas delegates argue at a breakfast meeting this morning that by all accounts was lively and heated at times. Ted Cruz spoke to the gathering this morning. Here's a look.
I recognize there's some folks here and elsewhere at the convention who are not happy.
That's right.
That's all right. You know, I'll say something to the folks here. Everyone here got involved in politics because we believe in something. I want you to think back when you first got involved in the political process, when you first started supporting a candidate, when you first ran for office. Why is it that you did it? What's it about? What are you fighting for? One of the things I love, thank you, sir, God bless you. One of the things I love about this Texas delegation is these are women and men in prison. It has been the greatest privilege of my life to represent each of you in the United States Senate. When I was sworn in as a senator, I took an oath to defend the Constitution. That's an obligation I take very seriously. That is an oath I intend to honor every single day. In addition to the Constitution, I have an obligation to every man and woman here, and every man and woman in the state of Texas. I work for you. I work for you, and you have every right, and I would say even a duty, to hold me accountable. That's why I'm here this morning. Would have been the easiest thing in the world to turn tail and run, but that ain't going to happen. Now, I suspect most, if not all of y'all, understand that these folks holding cameras are not our friends. They're not here because they want to have a beer with you. They're not here because they're planning to vote Republican in November. And so there's no story they want to write more than Republicans in disarray, convention on fire, everything going bad. That's what they're going to write. Have you noticed it every night? That's going to be the story.
Not true.
Well, it's up to us to determine whether it's true or not. I do think the American people are watching what we do and not what they say. You know, I can tell you last night, when I addressed the convention because Donald Trump asked me to. And when Donald asked me to, he didn't ask me to endorse. And indeed, 3 days ago, I talked on the phone with him and told him I'm not going to endorse you.
Why not? That's right.
Well, let me answer that. Sir, I'm happy to answer that, but I'm not going to engage in a screaming fight. And indeed, I'm going to do questions and answers right now. What I wanted to do last night was lay out the principles I believe we should stand for as Republicans. In that speech last night, I did not say a single negative word about Donald Trump. And I'll tell you this morning and going forward, I don't intend to say negative things about Donald Trump. The media would love me to. I promise you every question when I step off this stage is going to be, please say something horrible about Donald Trump. Come on, it makes good news. What I did say is what all of us should believe and why all of us, I think, got into politics in the first place. I started the speech by congratulating Donald on winning the nomination, by name. And then I encouraged folks here and at home that we deserve leaders who will stand for principle, who will do what they say. And I made a particular point to address conservatives at home. Listen, I assume there's a reason the Trump campaign wanted me to speak. They saw my speech several hours before I gave it. They knew exactly what I was going to say. I assume the reason they wanted me to speak is they believed my delivering that message would encourage people to come out and vote, and they believed it would help them. If they didn't, I was perfectly happy to get on a plane and go home. But in that speech last night, I asked conservatives at home, I asked Americans at home, do not stay home in November.
That's right.
And I laid out a standard. I said we should vote for candidates that you trust to defend our freedom and to be faithful to the Constitution. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, that's a standard I expect to be applied to me. I expect to be applied to every candidate on the ballot, from president down to dog catcher. This isn't just a team sport. We don't just put on red jerseys or blue jerseys and yay! This is about principles and ideals. This is about standing for what we believe in. And you know, listen, I have to say, it was somewhat dismaying that apparently some of Donald's biggest partisans, right down front, when they heard that people should vote for someone you can trust to defend our freedom and defend our conscience, defend the Constitution, immediately they began booing. I've got to say that's a little bit troubling what they're saying. You know, I'm reminded of an old story of a man who's in the middle of a huge lawsuit, a bet the company case. It means everything to him. His lawyer calls at the end of the trial, and he says, justice prevailed. The client immediately says, appeal immediately. Listen, I actually thought later last night Newt had it exactly right. We want to win this race. Newt stood up and said, you know what, the standard Ted laid out, who will defend freedom? Who will be faithful to the Constitution? Newt said Donald Trump is the only candidate that meets that standard. I'll tell you this, if we want to win this election, that's the only way we're winning this election. We're going to win this election by making the case to the American people. We're not going to win this election by yelling and screaming and attacking people. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any and all of your questions.
Are you going to vote for Trump?
Well, Well, thank you, sir, for your question, and I will answer it the same way I have answered it many, many times when our friends in the press have asked it, which is that I am doing what millions of Americans are doing. I am watching, I am listening, and as I told you last night, the standard that I intend to apply is which candidate I trust to defend our freedom and be faithful to the Constitution. I can tell you, I'm not voting for Hillary. Hillary fails that test profoundly, and I will note a significant part of my speech last night was laying out the incredible damage of Hillary Clinton's vision. But you know, some of y'all may recall when I ran for Senate, and a lot of people here worked very hard in that race. And there were a lot of folks in that race that said, you know what, you've got to vote for the lieutenant governor. He's next in line. It's his turn. This is a party. Be a team player. He's the one who's next in line. And an awful lot of Texans took a different view. I've laid out the standard I'm looking for, and I am hopeful. I'm going to be listening tonight. I'm going to be listening to Donald's speech. I'm going to be listening to how he and the campaign conduct themselves every day from now to November. And that's what I believe the American people are going to be doing also. And the way to win, as I tried with all my might to lay out last night, is not to just scream and yell and attack as a traitor anyone that would dare question our candidates. Yes, sir. So I answered it with as much as I'm going to say, which is that I am watching and listening to make that decision. And when I talked about holding people accountable, I think that applies to all of us. That's what I'm doing. I am watching and listening. The election isn't today. And I am listening to the candidate. Now, what I don't intend to do is go out and throw rocks at Donald. I don't intend to criticize Donald. I intend, like a voter, like all of us, just to listen and make the best judgment I can. And every one of us, I think, has to follow our conscience. When friends of mine, when supporters of mine are asking what to do, the answer I give to everyone is follow your conscience. Do what you believe is right. Do what you believe defends your children and defends this country. Yeah.
You realize that you can unite this party like no other man in this party, even more than our candidate, by using just a few words. And we need to do it now. We cannot do it in November. We need to leave this convention united. And we need to stand with you, and you need to stand with us.
So, sir, I appreciate your comments. And I will have to confess, what you said would be easy to do. How many people here are frustrated with politicians who just say anything? I'm going to answer your question. Listen, there are a lot of options that I could have taken that politically would have been a heck of a lot easier. There's option number one, which a whole bunch of people took, which is turn tail and run and don't come to the convention. There are a bunch of people that did that. I ain't one of them. There's another option. Let me tell you, the politically easy option is to stand up and pledge your allegiance to whoever the party nominee might be, no matter what. If you're an elected official, that's the right political outcome. And I'm going to tell you something, sir. I'm not going to lie to you. Whether you want me to or not, I'm not going to lie to you. And what I said last night is what I believe. So yes,
And I didn't say to support Donald Trump. I said support the party. The party.
you know, okay, so your point was support the party, the Republican Party, and I will point... Sir, I'm happy to answer questions, but I'm not going to engage in a screaming match. I actually believe in treating people with civility and respect. When it comes to supporting the party, number one, the 4 years I've been in office, there are an awful lot of elected officials in this room and across the party and across the country that I've traveled the country, I've traveled the state of Texas campaigning for, raising money for, fighting to help elect Republicans. But let me be very clear, this isn't a social club. It's not simply, Reagan gave a powerful speech 40 years ago where he said the Republican Party is not a fraternal order. It's not just my club. We either stand for shared principles or we're not worth anything. And let me ask folks here a related question. How many of y'all would like to see more leaders stand up to John Boehner and Mitch McConnell? I want to point out to folks here, you're seeing, and you saw last night, why so few elected leaders do. Because anytime you stand up to John Boehner and Mitch McConnell, leadership screams, support the team, you're a Republican, we're our leadership, sit down, shut up, just support the team, and damn it, if that's the price, I ain't going to do it. I'm going to honor the commitments I made to the voters instead.
Senator Cruz, thank you for putting your hat in the ring. Now, if you were asked to give a piece of advice to our nominee, Donald Trump, what would you tell him to woo and draw and attract the conscience, the principled, the hard constitutionalists to join and rally around his banner?
I think that's a fabulous question. And I'll tell you, that is what I endeavored to do in every word of that speech last night. That was the speech last night. You want to know another way to look at the speech last night? An outline, my very best effort is an outline to Donald Trump and their campaign. This is how you win. You know, I was up last night on Twitter reading through different articles online, and one of them I read had a word cloud of last night versus prior nights of the convention. If you look at the speech I gave, the word cloud, the dominant word that's about 50 times bigger than any other word is the word freedom. The prior night's word clouds, the dominant word, can anyone guess what it was? Trump. You know what? If we go to November and the dominant word the voters hear is Trump, or for that matter, if the dominant word is Hillary or email server, we're going to lose. You want to know how we win? We will win if the dominant message the voters hear is freedom, that this is about your life and your kids. That's how you win an election, by deserving to win an election. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ted. Hello. You are the voice of the conservative movement. And I want to ask you a question about an issue we had earlier this week that's very difficult for a lot of us, and that is the rules of the floor. The problem is, our rules have evolved to disfavor principled conservative candidates. We need a change in the future. Do you agree this party must get back to the founding principles of changing our rules to give every candidate a fighting chance to win the nomination?
Well, thank you for that question. You know, I will point out the rules we have are not an accident. We have those rules because people in power want those rules. And unsurprisingly, when people in power write rules, they are designed to protect and perpetuate those in power. Now, on the rules fights that happened on the Rules Committee, I very consciously stayed out of that. In fact, I wasn't in Cleveland. I was out of town. I didn't even arrive till that fight was over. I understand a lot of delegates fought passionately from the grassroots. My one comment that I made when I was asked about the rules, I said, you know, it seems to me that Republicans ought to be picking the Republican nominee. And as a voter, I think reforms that enhance the ability of Republicans to choose the Republican nominee, I think reforms that enhance the grassroots are beneficial reforms. And so, on any particular rules issue, I didn't get engaged. I trust the delegates. I trust you to make those determinations. I will say, when those in power use raw power to try to stifle and silence dissent, that's not conduct befitting of a party that was founded by Abraham Lincoln. All right, we'll do two more questions. Yes?
Thank you, Senator Cruz, for standing with Israel. Two-thirds of us in Texas and two-thirds of the people in this room are your delegates and alternates, and we love you. And we are so upset that the Trump people booed you when we are cheering for Trump at this point, at this convention. So I want to apologize for what they did to you. Number some of the Never Trump people say that we should write your name in, and I'm saying I think that's a vote for Hillary. What is your opinion on that? Because we will take direction from you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the encouragement. And let me say to you, thank you for standing for Israel as well. Listen, I am not encouraging anybody to write my name in. That is not something I'm suggesting that anybody do. I'm not a candidate in this race. We suspended our race on May 3rd. I was very clear. We didn't prevail in this race. I wanted to prevail in this race. We worked very hard to, but we didn't. And we lost the race. I recognize that. I respect the democratic process. I respect the will of the people. Yes.
Hi, good morning. My name is Geraldine Sam. I've supported you, and we are a family. We're a family that we can agree to disagree, and that's okay. But you signed a pledge that said that you would support the party nominee. As a girl growing up, my mother and father said that your word is your bond. And if you didn't believe that you were going to say it at the time, I and you weren't going to do it at that time, then you shouldn't have said it, because your word is your bond. And now when you're delegate still, I supported you, and I expected you to keep your word and say that your word is your bond.
Hear, hear.
Well, thank you, ma'am, and thank you for speaking and speaking from your heart. I will tell you, when I stood on that debate stage, and they asked every candidate there, if you don't win, will you support the nominee? I raised my hand, and I raised my hand enthusiastically, with full intention of doing exactly that. And I'll tell you the day that pledge was abrogated. The day that was abrogated was the day this became personal. And as I said at the time, and I'm not going to get into criticizing or attacking Donald Trump, but I'll just give you this response. I am not in the habit of supporting people who attack my wife and attack my father. And that pledge was not a blanket commitment that if you go and slander and attack Heidi, that I'm going to nonetheless come like a servile puppy dog and say thank you very much for maligning my wife and maligning my father. And I will note, I will note, sir, you're making crying signs in the back. I will note, sir, that you might have a similar view if someone were attacking your wife. In fact, I hope you would. I hope you would. No, this is not politics. I will tell the truth. I will not malign, I will not insult, I will not attack, I will tell the truth. This is not a game, it is not politics. Right and wrong matters. We have not abandoned who we are in this country. No, sir, I do not believe that is correct. If anyone here thinks that I was eager to come to this convention. Thank you, sir. If anyone thinks I was eager to come to this convention and give a speech laying out, supporting a great many of the policy positions laid out by Donald Trump, laying out why Hillary Clinton is utterly unfit to be president, despite the fact that neither he nor his campaign has ever taken back a word they said about my family, I promise you I was not eager to do that. That was not something I was happy to do. It was something I thought I had an obligation to do. I had an obligation to go and stand and speak. And I will say, what does it say when you stand up and say, vote your conscience? And rabid supporters of our nominee begin screaming, what a horrible thing to say. If we can't make the case to the American people that voting for our party's nominee is consistent with voting your conscience, is consistent with defending freedom and being faithful to the Constitution, then we are not going to win and we don't deserve to win. That's how you win elections. All right, one final question. Yes, ma'am.
I am from the Rio Grande Valley. I met you at the Church of the King when you were running for senator and my husband was running for Congress. And I asked you, are you a man of your word? You said, yes, ma'am, I am. And I asked you, if you don't keep your word, can I address you whenever?
Absolutely.
And you said that I could. I know that many things were said in the campaign, ugly things, terrible things that should have never taken place. I believe what you just said, that you defend your family, the integrity of your wife, of your marriage, of your father, and I voted for you. I love you dearly, and I have great respect for you. However,
Thank you.
I have to say that it is not about Donald Trump. It is not about Ted Cruz or Heidi Cruz or Rafael Cruz. It is about the United States.
Ma'am, I agree with you emphatically. It is about the United States. And I will point out that every day in the Senate, I have spent every waking moment fighting for this country, fighting for you, fighting to honor the promises I made. And by the way, there's a reason why others don't. Because the reaction in Washington is you get screamed and hollered down when you follow your commitments. My speech, you do it anyway, yes, and that's what I did last night. Because last night, what I laid out last night was not a speech that was focused on me. Last night was a speech that was focused entirely on the United States of America, on a path forward. Our country is at the edge of a precipice. We are at the risk of losing the greatest country in the history of the world. And my soul cries at where this country is, at what we're doing to the freedom of our kids and grandkids. And what I said last night is what I believe is the only path to saving this country. And it is not simply blindly chanting a name and yelling down dissenters. That is not, I believe in free speech. Let me point out, by the way, can anyone imagine our nominee standing in front of voters answering questions like this? I owe this to you. I owe this to you every day because I work for you. And so I'm going to answer the questions, even fellows who yell and scream and insult. You know what? You got a right under the First Amendment to express your views, and I'm going to defend your rights even to insult me. That's what I believe. But when you said it's about the United States of America, I can tell you this. If we don't defend freedom and the Constitution, and if we don't make the case to the American people that our candidate can be trusted to defend freedom and the Constitution, we will lose, and we will deserve to lose. My speech last night was entirely about this country and how we save this country, and I am going to continue to tell you the truth each and every day. Whether or not it is politically helpful or convenient, I wasn't elected to do the convenient thing. I was elected to stand up and do what's right, and that's what I will do each and every day. Thank you, and God bless you.
A lively session from this morning. The Texas delegation, their breakfast with their senator, Ted Cruz, following his speech last night at the Republican National Convention. You may have heard one of the last questions.